want to go to New York now and bring in Matthew Swift. Matthew works with Concordia. And Matthew, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time in this weekend coverage here. We're trying to assess the damage from a financial standpoint. And you look historically, these storms have gotten more and more expensive over the years, in part because we're going to places where we've never lived before. What's your message on the cost of this, Matthew? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me, Bill. I think this is the exact time to be talking about the need for disaster preparedness and infrastructure investment. The economic impact of these things can be huge, not necessarily on the national economy, as Secretary Ross, the Secretary of Commerce, said yesterday, but in fact on the states, on Carolinas, on these communities. So the thing that we need to be very cognizant of is what is the local community resilience that's going to take place here. It's, yes, this is downgraded to a tropical storm. Certain rain levels aren't as high as we thought. But the theme that we're seeing, of course, all day today is the huge risk for flooding. So that can have substantial economic impact on these various communities throughout the Carolinas. And so it's very important that we prepare for that we brace for that, but that we also have the conversations we need to have about better preparing for disasters in terms of the long term. Things like infrastructure investment, something that we need to have those hard conversations now so that we do not forget that later on when we hold our government officials accountable for, frankly, the lack of action on things like infrastructure.
You know, my sense getting here on Wednesday is that the hotel we checked into, they were very well prepared. It's called the Hotel Ballast. We've since called it the Hotel Bunker because it's a 9-story building made of concrete, and we felt very safe and secure in there. And the other indicator that we knew we were in a good place is the paperwork they handed out to everybody who was checking in. They had a plan for everything, Matthew. They had a safe room in the hotel that was on the inside, away from windows. They had a plan for when the generator went out. They had a plan for the ice. They had a plan for the water and the food. It was very impressive. What is your assessment about how the federal government has gotten ready for this?
I think the federal government has done what they need to do in this process. I think they've actually handled it quite well. I think they deserve good marks for that. I think the most important thing that you were just pointing out is what the private sector can also do in this space. So we have a partnership with AmeriCares where we're looking specifically, we at Concordia, on the long-term economic implications here. We need to remember that hurricanes like Katrina, for instance, it started at a $50 billion cost, then an $80 billion cost, then settled at a $160 billion cost. So the economic impact can be big. I heard Congressman Wilson advise people, which is very smart, for people to stay put, but remember that affects things like employment, that affects shipments, that affects a lot of economic activity that we're losing. And so again, it's great to hear a perfect example of where there's been an instance of great preparedness, but as an overall objective, we need to think of the long term because the long-term economic implications can be rather substantial.
I was quite impressed with a figure I saw the other day. 10% of the workforce in North Carolina, 10% of the workforce in South Carolina, they're all related to the tourism industry that flows up and down the Atlantic beach here on the East Coast. Matthew, great to have you on today. Thank you.
Thank you
for your Saturday afternoon work there in New York. Matthew Swift from Concordia.